Welcome to another installment of Deconstructing Babylon, where we discern the signs, symbols, and storylines of the mystery religion of Hollywood Babylon. I'm the Discerning Clerk, and I use a biblical framework to deconstruct 90s movies in particular, because I believe they have been telling us their plots and plans since the beginning, and because 90s movies are my favorite. I'm feeling a bit spooky with the cooler temperatures and changing colors. Longer nights mean movie marathons, and practical magic always made the top of my list for spooky season. At least, it used to. The mystery religion contains magic and witchcraft. They've used movies to glamorize these practices and make them acceptable to the masses, and also appeal to the disenfranchised youth. When the movie The Craft came out, it fully influenced me to look into Wicca and witchcraft practices. Scary stuff. I'm thankful the Lord not only protected me in that time, but also got me out by way of making it seem, frankly, lame and powerless. I hope the deconstruction of today's film, Practical Magic, can help at least one person out there see the truth about witchcraft. Released in 1998, the Video Movie Guide gives it a measly 2 stars out of 5. Nothing could be less interesting than a story that makes stuff up as it goes along, fails to establish any parameters for reasonable behavior, and then wraps everything up with some thumpingly anticlimactic deus ex machina intervention. All charges apply to this dim bulb fantasy comedy, which fritters away the talents of its 4 stars, and does no justice at all to Alice Hoffman's source novel. Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman star as a pair of witches whose white magic proves incapable of properly dispatching a nasty fellow with a tendency to rise from the dead. This material has been handled much better in the past, with 2 films based on Fritz Leiber's Conjure Wife, 1962's Burn Witch Burn, and 1980's Witch's Brew. Forget this misfire, it's practically incomprehensible. Ouch. I always thought this film was well received by audiences. The user reviews on IMDb rate it higher at 6.3 out of 10. Perhaps it's more of a cult favorite. At any rate, let's get into the meaning of practical magic. The first image we are shown is the sea, and immediately thrust into a 16th century witch trial, where we are told the history of the Owens women throughout generations, beginning with Maria.
But as her bitterness grew, the spell turned into a curse.
The curse affects men who would love an Owens woman, and I suppose one she loves in return. The story quickly jumps through several generations to our leads, losing their own father to the curse, and then their mother to a broken heart. This is all the backstory we need to meet spinster sisters Frances and Jet, aunties to the grieving girls Sally and Gillian. The elder sisters vow to raise their progeny in the craft they regularly practice.
My little witch. Let's go inside and do some spells.
Sally, the dark-haired elder sister, seems to have a greater natural gift for the craft than her sister Jilly. The aunties have real power, and they exploit it for money against the townspeople who otherwise revile the witches.
Take the money, Jet.
The duality is already quite evident between the sisters, both elder and junior. Sally casts her spell at night, in the light of the full moon. And years later, the girls are grown and Jillian sneaks out at night, but not before they make a blood oath, which is weird considering they're already blood-related. Sally is rather left behind by her jet-setting, bed-hopping sister until she is overcome by a love spell. I'm sure she hasn't forgotten about the curse, but her husband, Michael, manages to live long enough to give her 2 daughters. Of course. Jillian is far away from Sally in every way, physically, geographically, relationally. While Sally seems to have power in the moon, Jilly basks in the sun. They each tell the other of their own perfect lives, each getting exactly what they want. Sally with her blissfully normal family, Jilly with her dangerously erotic fantasy. And it will all end for both of them. A black dog follows Michael home one day, as Sally chases the so-called death beetle that warned her mother of her father's impending death. As you know, when I see a dog in a movie, I also see the view of God for the director or associated characters, We've already established the dog here as an omen of death, but not the cause. When Sally first met Michael, she was surrounded by various dogs. So the death beetle is about the generational curse, but the dog is about the spell cast for their relationship, in my opinion. I suppose it means the aunties call on various gods, deities, or stars to accomplish their spells.
You brought him into my life, now I want you to bring him back.
In her grief, Sally thinks of her far-off sister, and Jilly is likewise reminded of their blood oath. Jillian's life looks darker than her sunny disposition denote, as she lay with a dark man, her love and desire, Jimmy Angeloff. The fact that Angel is right there in his name gives me all the meaning I need for this character, but let's see how it plays out. Jilly drives through the night to be with her grieving sister, but only after dosing Jimmy with belladonna, deadly nightshade.
He has his whole Dracula cowboy thing.
They make a few references to Dracula in relation to Angeloff, and this may be the first Dracula reference I've noticed in a deconstruction. We're all familiar with the story of the vampire Dracula. Many a cinematic homage have been made to the famed Nightwalker. He is thought by some to be based on Vlad the Impaler and even the devil.
He can survive the curse.
The curse, they said, kills any man who would love an Owens woman. Jimmy has to love Jilly first before even being subject to the curse. The townspeople have been a recurring character of sorts. The angry mob that repress and revile the Owenses throughout the generations, always beginning with the children.
Witch! Witch! You're a witch!
Sally writes to her sister how she dreams of love and wants to be seen, but when she was younger, she never wanted to fall in love. She also gets over her grief pretty quickly.
There is no man, Jilly. Only that moon.
So with the first act firmly behind us, we get into the plot thickening. Jilly needs help and Sally rushes to her side. Apparently, Angeloff has escalated the aggression.
Blood on the moon.
I know.
Blood on the moon.
Jimmy takes the witch sisters hostage, and when he continually tries to strangle Jillian, Sally administers a lethal dose of belladonna, and he dies. Not because of the curse, not because he loved her, but in order to avoid a murder charge, the novice witches need to resurrect the dead angel, and they will use magic to do so.
I don't care what he comes back as long as he comes back with a pulse.
I think she's going to regret those words. Regardless, they use their aunt's spell book and elements to bring him back.
Mighty Hecate, make it right.
They're actually mispronouncing the name of the goddess they are calling on. Hecate is the Roman goddess of spells, magic, the moon, and the night. She is also associated with dogs, unsurprisingly. Despite their blunder and without completing the rite, Angeloff wakes up and demands Jillian be his bride unto death.
Want you to be my wife?
Sally kills him again, but can you kill someone twice? I guess witches can. And the Owen sisters get it done and bury him mafia style in the backyard. During a midnight margarita session, the two generations of Owen sisters come under the influence of spirits of brutal truth, and they each spew their true feelings of wicked judgment and bitter unforgiveness towards one another. The source of the vitriol isn't just the strong liquor, but whose bottle it was in life and death. And the junior sisters don't come clean to their knowing aunts, who decide to leave them to the consequences of their actions, while placing a protection spell over the younger sister duo.
The man under the roses.
Halfway through the film, we meet Gary Hallett, an investigator who is looking for Jimmy. Gary canvasses the town and interviews the very sea of people who would drown and abolish the Owenses.
Witch? Yeah. Evil? No. It's a pagan label.
But it's not just a pagan label. They're witches who say they perform light magic. And Sally uses apothecary to make her spa products. I mean, who knows what kinds of intentions she's set in her tinctures.
Which people?
Which people?
Gary explains to Sally that Angelov is a suspect in a strangulation death of another young woman, and he desires to bring him to justice. Sally acts differently around him and gives the notion that she's defending Jimmy when she knows he tried to kill Jilly as well.
No, there's no devil in the craft.
Frankly, the devil doesn't care if you worship him, or Hecate, or Hercules, or yourself, just as long as you don't worship Yahweh. Jilly and her nieces cook up a little magic to get rid of Gary and his questioning. But the girls quickly realize that he is the same man Sally conjured up when she was younger, the impossible man, and they don't want to get rid of him for their mother's sake. Meanwhile, Jimmy is making his spooky presence known. And Sally finally tells Gary the truth she's been claiming she can't hide from him.
Did you or your sister kill James Angelo?
Julian didn't kill anybody.
Gary himself seems to be under a spell, as he is overcome by a protective instinct and a desire for physical intimacy he can't quite explain. Since he is the manifestation of Sally's childhood desires, he may always be under her spell. Meanwhile, Jilly finds herself under the possessive power of the departed Jimmy, who manifests himself somehow in her. He's dead, so he shouldn't have any power, but it doesn't stop him from threatening the lawman. Rather, Angelov is harmed by the very star that is merely a symbol of Gary's power and authority.
Yes, you killed a spirit, but I'm the one who took his life.
You can't kill a spirit. Only a spirit can kill a spirit, because spirit is eternal, and flesh is not.
Very into sisters right now.
See?
We have to force his spirit back into the grave.
At least the ants get it. The grave is the first death, the place for the dead. And in order to accomplish this massive task, they say they need 9 women to form a full coven.
A little witch in all of us.
As the witches prepare, they are plagued by toads, which has been Jimmy's token from the grave. They form a circle around their possessed sister and chant. The phrase they are chanting translates to, God destroy you, I curse you. But if there's no devil in the craft, there's no God either. Yahweh condemns these practices and any communion with the dead. Whatever they've done, it doesn't work. Jimmy doesn't leave Jilly, so Sally forces him out by performing another blood oath. Again, not sure what purpose this serves or what the meaning is, but it's giving Elsa and Anna. As in, sisters are really life's true love.
Ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
Right. We've established his physical body is dead, but you still can't kill a spirit. We are made from dust, and to dust we will return, but the spirit is eternal. But the end of Jimmy isn't the end of the movie. Since she's no longer considered a suspect in Jimmy's murder, Sally reconsiders her relationship status with the lawman, Gary.
Was it our joined hands that finally lifted Maria's curse?
How does she know the curse is lifted? Because they alluded to it? They never said that as an intention or called on the correct deities to accomplish that. Sally was with Michael for several years before he died. It's only been a few months with Gary, but whatever. They kiss, the movie is over with the last image of a witch, black hat, broom, and all. For once, I agree with the Video Movie Guide and its take on how nonsensical this plot is. I have to think that the reviewers read the source novel first and were disappointed with the adaptation, as is the case a lot of the time. But the filmmakers are still intentional with the symbolism, whether they are conscious of it or not. I point out the opening and closing images for symbolic purposes, but I don't always include them in my overall thoughts. The first image they showed us was the sea, which is biblically and even metaphorically known as a vast people. This is confirmed by the townspeople throughout the raging sea, out of which comes the witches. And they continue to live seaside, poisoning the water, as it were. When Jillian moves to the desert, she isn't plagued by townspeople, but is instead tormented by a toad king. But I'm going to come back to him. Typically, we see sun and moon symbolism, and here the moon figures prominently. The spells are done at night. The moon itself gives them signs throughout. I believe Sally herself is the moon. Though it is the lesser light, she is the stronger witch and sister. She has a natural talent for the craft and the ability to make a business. She's also the one to fall in love twice. She's the firstborn of the two and is preferred in every way. If Sally is the moon, Jillian is the sun by default. And though it is the greater light, she is the secondborn, red-haired, fair-skinned, and less powerful sister. She doesn't fall in love. She doesn't have any children. She doesn't even really know the craft. In the end, she is merely the vessel that Jimmy overtakes. Gary is more than just a manifestation of a young witch's desires. The star he carries is a symbol of power that also represents his knowledge and upholding of the law. Stars come out at night with the moon, and if the moon is the lesser light, stars are an afterthought. Filmmakers are really doing the most to downplay men's importance. The fact that he is a lawman points me to the ones in the Bible who knew and upheld the law, the temple priests. Originally, this was the tribe of Levi that included Moses and more specifically his brother Aaron. Being a priest was sometimes bloody and brutal, and the tribe had no part in the inheritance of the land, but their inheritance was Yahweh. I see police and public servants upholding the law as the modern equivalent to the ancient priests, much more so than pastors and preachers who claim to know and uphold the law. But I digress, because Gary bends the law, looks the other way, and ends up in relationship with the moon witch. Broad is the way that leads to destruction. Now we come to Jimmy Angelov. As I mentioned before, Angel is his name, and it's fairly obvious that his character is a dark angel type, but I think it's a bit more, and that he actually represents a false Christ. When I also consider the toad symbolism, I'm reminded of the plagues on Egypt for God's people to escape. It was a form of judgment, which I believe is what's going on here. He is alluring to the sun-filled sister in ways that she can't understand, especially when he turns violent against her. She says that Jimmy is strong enough to survive the curse, and he desires to make her his wife, though I doubt he loves her based on what they showed, which would mean he wouldn't even be subject to the curse. If anything, he overcomes the curse by his nature because he doesn't die easily. The Bible forbids these kinds of practices, calling witchcraft, divination, and necromancy abominations. Not because they have no power, but because they do. There is no path to God within, but rather attempts to access his power and blessings completely apart from him. And there can be a real temptation to rely on our own understanding when God has already forbidden it. All that to say, this is the reason I use a biblical framework. I can watch a movie like Practical Magic and know they are dealing with real power in the spiritual realm, but are presenting it in a way that is nonsensical, illogical, and hopefully not attractive. Thank you for enduring to the end. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it and a thumbs down if you didn't. Subscribe if you want to, but don't follow me. Follow the one who saves you. And until the next one, keep looking up.
What's going on in here?
Just making toast, Jizzle.